Welcome to CaCo Talks, the weekly podcast where conversations about life, hot topics, mental health, and more take center stage. We are your hosts, Catelyn and Courtney Geiger. Together, we explore thought-provoking discussions with an ambient vibe that inspires open and honest dialogue. So sit back, relax, and join us for some insightful conversation that will leave you feeling informed and inspired. Welcome back to CaCo Talks. We are super excited to be back. It has been a very long time. And this is our first episode since I came to
regular
visit.
episode,
So
like our positive.
yeah, regular.
Yeah.
We had the vlogs go out, and then you had your review on the movie. So we're excited to be back. Today we will be talking about it's I guess like an interview. What do you call it?
Yeah, it's from Soft White Underbelly. If anybody watches that channel, it's a pretty big YouTube channel, actually.
Yeah,
I used to watch it
really
all the time. Yeah, usually the content is kind of about like the people out in LA, like on Skid Row. That's how it started. So he would interview people who are like very kind of like taboo in society, like prostitutes, drug addicts, homeless people. And I always enjoyed those videos because like most of the time we don't get to really sit down and talk to people like that, you know, and know what their lives are like. But
yeah, exactly.
He's expanded so much now over the years, and like so he's doing like just interesting people, just almost like portraits really is what he's doing. He's doing like video portraits of people. And so for this episode, he talked to a divorce lawyer. I'm assuming maybe in LA. I don't know where he was from. I wanted to know where he was at because, you know, he sounded like he had some high priced clients. I was like, it sounds like he's in a big metro area, you know. But yeah, I think
I want to say he was in New York. It sounds like.
It felt like New York for some reason. But then I was like, and it could be LA too. But I was getting New York vibes from the interview. It's one of the recent interviews he posted. It's literally titled like marriage and thoughts on love and marriage from a divorce lawyer. You can look up, if you just look up Soft White Underbelly, you'll find him. But yeah, I watched that video yesterday, admittedly, because I was well, you know what I'm working on right now, right? I was like, well, this will be interesting. I'm trying to listen to just as much as I can, think about it, right? But I like Sci-Fi Underbelly, but I listened to it and I was like, whoa, this really, you know, not only is it helping me think about this project, it's also helping me just think differently a little bit in general, you know? And he put it in just such precise terms. He put it in such, I think, relatable terms. And he really broke down what marriage really, really is. So I shared it with Catelyn because Catelyn has some strong views on marriage too. And I was like, we should talk about this on the podcast. We were really moved by it. We had a long conversation yesterday about it. So
yeah, no, the guy's name is I think his name is James Sexton. Yeah. He's a divorce attorney in New York, and he has a book on how to stay in a marriage. I think that's what it's called. But he is a divorce lawyer, and he has some controversial views on marriage, I guess, and the idea of coupling versus marriage. And I, prior to watching this, have always felt that marriage is something that you do for business purposes, is a legally binding contract. And that's how you handle business, not because I love you and I would never, ever, ever, ever get married just because I love someone. So prior to watching this, I had that viewpoint on it. And I'm telling you, when I tell you the stares, head turns, the utter disgust, shock people give me when I like tell them my views on marriage, are just like, what are you doing? And then when they find out that I'm in a relationship, they're like, really, what are you doing? Because it's like, okay, you can have that idea, but of course you're single, right? But it's not that. I just don't see marriage. I mean, marriage is not, in all honesty, is to me not about love. And so for that to be the only thing that you need to marry somebody is very odd. So the guy, James Sexton, the divorce attorney, he gave me further insight and even a more different perspective on it, because I don't even know if, you know, business is a good enough reason, you know. I don't watching
Yeah.
that. I don't even think it's a good idea. And I want to do a disclaimer really quick too. This is not
Yes.
us saying that you don't go get married. Like, you need to do what works best for you in your relationship and however your wants and dreams. This is just food for thought because of what this guy as a divorce attorney tells us, right? And I highly suggest going watching that video. It's under the channel Soft White Underbelly, and it's about diverse. I guess diverse attorney talks about marriage, love, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Go look it up. Maybe we should link it in the comments. Probably should.
Yeah, let's link it in the
We'll link
comments
it in
for
the
sure.
comments actually. So please go watch it before you just sign your life away. Please
Yes,
do it.
and I agree. I want to just add to Catelyn's disclaimer too, that we realize that marriage is such a personal thing for people a lot of times, and that people really do see themselves oftentimes as the exception in marriage, not the rule. And we're not here to tell you that you are not the exception, because you very well could be this exception. You absolutely
Very
could.
true.
You know yourself in your relationship. We're offering the holistic, honestly, non-married person's view, like what this looks like from the outside, because sometimes when you're in it, you can't see it.
Yeah.
So
And even if
yeah.
you see it, right, a lot of the times you are just so caught up in this idea of love and this fairy tale of what it should be that a lot of times the red flags are very present before you even get to that point, and that maybe we should just couple and not be married because of the stipulations, or not even stipulations, the lack of stipulations that come with something like marriage.
Yeah,
So,
it's basically we're offering a constructive criticism on what is like what this looks like to the outside. You know what I mean? I use the analogy I was telling Caitlin about, like it's like going to a circus. Everybody who's married is like in the circus, but the single people or people who are not married are outside looking in on the circus, and we see like you're walking on like tight ropes with no netting underneath to catch you. You don't have any, you don't have rigs on you to make, or you're not rigged up to, what do they call those things? The safety cables or whatever. Like that's what it looks like to us from the outside.
Yeah.
So we're telling you what it looks like to other people, and like hopefully that is helpful.
Yeah, I mean that's not necessarily my purpose and like what it looks like. I think of things more logically, and so I think of things in the sense of like, does this make sense or not? And the construct of marriage does not make sense, right? So that is my point in this discussion. To obviously you have to ask yourself that question, but to just share a different opinion, a non-common opinion on the matter, because most people want to be married, and that's unfortunately the dream. Not even unfortunately, I guess, but for me, unfortunately, the dream that we are sold, and this fantasy that we are sold. And so it is something to, at this point in our lives, to critically think about. And also then the ramifications of even getting married and then possibly getting a divorce. So highly suggest go watching that interview. We're actually going to talk about a few of the things that he talked about in there that were pretty jarring, if you ask me.
Yeah. And I think also we should start by saying we all recognize that we are sold a narrative about what relationships between men and women, specifically heterosexually, should look like. And even what marriage should look like between I don't want to say homosexual, but same-sex marriages, right? We're told we are all fighting a major, massive narrative. Like this narrative is so pervasive. So if you are believing the narrative, to be honest, that's what you should like. That's what you should be doing by society standards. So it's not even bad that you believe the narrative. It's just like critically think about what the narrative is, because movies, TV, songs, books, articles, religious institutions, schools, all these sort of institutions are set up around the idea of coupling and marriage. A lot of them do,
Yeah, especially in adulthood. Like that's
seen as a form of entertainment as an adult, is to get with somebody.
It's entertainment. I think it's seen as a social status. It's seen as you are like a competent male or female. I mean, it gives you all of it's like checks all of these boxes that it shouldn't even be checking, to be fair.
Yeah. But that's in society. That's what our world is. That's the narrative that our world is preaching. Even like
Yeah.
things like jobs, like being married at a job is like, oh, you're seen as a like good, dependable person, or like married men make more money than single men, kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's worth considering why, and then especially you look at the stats of what he was saying. If most marriages end up in divorce, then obviously there was a disconnect between what the narrative is telling us and then what's actually happening in the real world. So, there needs to be some critical thought about why that's happening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the quotes he was using was or not the quotes, the stats he was using was, I think he said about between 53 and 56% of marriages in the US end in divorce, right? And
But
that is
he added another like 20% on. He's like, if you add the people who are just staying for the kids, that's another probably like
for the kids, and he
20%.
said something else. If they're staying for kids, and if they're staying
Or like financial reasons or something.
yeah, that was another reason he said that they stay. He was at first he was being generous saying 10%, but he was like to be
fair,
even
probably like
more.
20%.
Yeah, it's probably about 20%.
Yeah,
right?
so he's like that number gets up to about 70%.
It's about 75%, right? So from the jump, you just signing away your life, right? And that on this piece of paper that doesn't have any information about what's going to happen during, after, what to expect, what not to expect, what are your responsibilities and roles, just signing it away, right? You are already at a 75-ish% chance of getting divorced.
Yeah.
Already. And so he was just saying, like, you're taking a huge risk. That's one of the greatest risks you can take in your life, and
it's not the greatest.
It's not the greatest, and then the reward is dealing with another person. So it's like, oh, is it really rewarding?
Another thing he broke down too, which I think this will help people understand. He said, using that 75% statistic, he said if you walked outside and someone said, okay, if you go outside, there's a 75% chance that a bowling ball is going to hit you on the head. Would you do it? You're not going to do it. Like, if you think about it, that's like what, like in so many terms, that's like the same thing he was saying that marriage really is. It's like there's a 75% chance-ish that it probably is going to not work. And then he also said something which I thought was really good. He said all marriages end in divorce or death. And the idea is that you get to death. That's the ideal state, which is morbid sort of to think about. But like the idea is that either one of you or both of you dies before this marriage ends, right? And you stay together. That's what the ideal is. And it's like, when you really think about that, is that necessarily, that's not guaranteeing whatever happens in between.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? That's not discussing anything that happens between the work it takes to be in a marriage or be in a relationship, to have those kinds of, to build real partnership with somebody. So, yeah, he really threw out some really good stats. He threw out some really good analogies that I really think would really help people to really think.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Yeah, another thing that I thought was really interesting too is how he was saying, like, marriages in prior to social media. I was like, nobody really talks about the impact of social media on marriages, in that, you may be from a little small town where there's, 5 single people, 5 single females, and 4 single men. That's your picking,
Yeah.
And so now with the help of social media, you have millions of people at your fingertips, right? And it just takes a little quick DM to get any sort of spark going, right? And so you don't feel the need to maintain said marriage. You can go find something greener and better every time, right? And so the impact of social media on marriages is basically, they're not lasting, which we already knew. But it is interesting to see that even a divorce attorney is basically attributing social media to a huge impact on the success or lack of success for marriage. And I also wanted to say too that he also emphasizes that marriage as an institution is faulty from the start. Like it's something that probably shouldn't exist. And he was saying that it's pretty much an archaic technology, because that's what it is. He was saying then it was faulty, now it's faulty, it will always be faulty, and he does not see that changing just because people are sold this dream. And so, I mean, the whole institution of marriage is
He called
has
it
always been
technology.
questionable and will always be questionable.
Yeah,
It's just up to you whether or not you're going to question it.
That, yes. And he also said too that he just kept mentioning, he's like, marriage is a technology, and when we think about what technology is, it's like using science and to create practically things that are practical for everyday use, right? So like a computer is what we would think of as technology, or our phones would we think of as technology. And what he's implying, I think, with technology, or using that word technology, is that this institution serves a specific function in society. And I think that's how you have to think about it. It's not really, it's not something that is totally and completely emotionally driven, or romantic driven, or personal connection driven. It's something that serves a direct function, and I think we might have talked about this earlier in the podcast, early in the podcast, when we were doing the podcast. But the purpose for a society like the United States, or capitalistic society, marriage has a direct purpose.
Oh, yeah.
Number one, it controls the vast majority of people into these sort of family unit structures, right? So then we can ensure the birth of children, which keeps our race going, or not race, but our nationality, our nation going, because we need more people to work in the future to keep all of these systems flowing.
And
so
you
it
need people in
ensures,
debt.
and it keeps people indebted to this lifestyle. You're selling people a lifestyle. You're selling them that you get married, have kids, own a home. You're not only, you're in debt for years, so you're working for years. You're getting, you're paying for your children's education. You're paying for, medical costs, like all of these things. A big price tag is attached to the institution of marriage. And so if we're convinced that we need this institution, we're also convinced that we need to spend the money
to support
it. So it serves a direct function in our society to have people establish themselves around family units.
And to be clear on what that looks like. Yeah. Because now it's like you fail and you try again. You fail and you try again. You just fail and you try again.
Exactly.
Until you, I guess, get what you think you... I don't know if people really get what they want. Like, it's very few and far between on people who are genuinely happy in marriage, I think.
Yeah. And I think also another function that marriage serves in our world is it is a way of, in my opinion, controlling men, which I think our society sees men as a bigger threat, like for physical violence, I guess, for women. Like, it's the idea that if a man is attached to a woman in some sort of monogamous situation, he at least has a woman that he can like unleash whatever like tendencies onto. I think it serves that purpose on a like base level, because again, we do exist in a patriarchy. So I think it makes it's sort of like we'll marry off average women to average men. Now, higher ranking men might have access to more women, which is a more hypergamous type situation. But for, the average guy, find one woman and then you have access to at least a woman. You know what I'm saying? I think it serves that purpose too, of kind of keeping like men in check. Patriarchally. I
disagree, but I can tell you because
I think it also keeps women in check too, but it keeps this sort of like, well, you have a family to focus on, so you need to be following certain rules. There needs to be certain behaviors you follow.
I disagree with that, because no one tells you how to act in a relationship. No one.
No, but there's still an expectation that if you are a wife and a mother, you're going to be doing certain things. Like, you're gonna, take care of the home, or you're gonna make sure that you pick
but I
up
don't
the kids
think that's
from school.
that's the narrative to keep any guy off the street. Because let's be honest, a lot of married men are still on the street doing these things. So I don't think that is the idea that is sold to men. I think it's like for men, it's just women are seen as something that you can control, and thus you can do whatever.
That's why I think that they are told that through marriage you can have control and access to a woman. That's what I think.
And,
Well, and I'm only comparing that to ancient societies where they were basically harems. So like the women, there would only be really one man, one maybe two men that the women were actually having any kind of intercourse with. And the rest of the men were basically like worker men who did not have access to women. And women were almost this like select luxury status thing.
I mean, as they should be, clearly.
Well, I mean, and then it would be more like one man who could afford all of these women to have access to all these women would have access to women. Everybody else who couldn't didn't, which I think from that, that model makes the man on the average scale, the average guy, be like, well, why does this guy get all the women? And then they get violent about that sort of thing. You know what I mean? So I think monogamy also serves that purpose. Maybe that's my conspiracy theory, but patriarchally, I think it's a way of, quote, taming the average man and keeping the average man from like revolting in some ways against the rich dudes who have access.
I don't know. That's an interesting theory. I don't know about that one.
I think it's one way of taming men and giving access, and controlling women too.
Definitely, I can see that as a way of controlling women. I don't know if I saw this in this video or not, but I was watching something and you can tell me if it's in there or not, but he was saying like most that it's like the little things that you do or don't do or you stop doing that cause the marriage to like break down if it is dumbed down to a single thing. But it's like these little bits of like disconnection. And I agree with that in one way, but I also think too that like it's and this is, I guess, this is not in support of marriage. I mean, personally, I'm like team coupling, you know what I'm saying? But I see how that breakdown, it definitely causes things to change. But I think that's when you communicate, right? So I was like, I didn't quite understand that. I was just like, why
about
not
the tiny moments of disconnect?
Yeah, like if you feel like disconnected, like that's when you're like, hey, like what's going on? Are you okay? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, that's
like,
what you should do. You should communicate. But I think he was saying that a lot of people don't necessarily like know how to, or like they don't take the steps to actually do the work for that.
Yeah, that's true.
So then it just ends up, he was just using an example. He was using like granola or something as an example of just how like eventually, the husband stopped buying the granola, just replacing it and being considerate about it. And so, he like, you just see like that was just an example. It was like a symptom of what was going
Yeah,
on,
he did say that.
I think.
Yeah.
So, and he was saying that happened so much earlier on than before they got to his office. And he was like, how did this happen? And she was like, well, there was like the granola situation. And he was like, yeah, that happened way before you even got to my office. So that's when it really needs to be addressed. Not when you were sitting in my office and we're duking it out over who gets the house.
Yeah. And
like
he's like, when you come to my office, it's a wrap.
done. Yeah, he's like, by the time you get to me, there was no saving it.
Yeah. So one thing he did suggest that I thought was interesting is if you do get married, you have to get a prenup.
Yeah,
absolutely have to get a prenup. And do you agree with that in that you should get a prenup, or do you still think you should just absolutely not get married?
I mean, I agree with both. I think for me personally, I'm just going to say I personally don't see myself ever getting married just because of what Catelyn said. I see it as a business transaction now, especially, and I don't see it as something that I would want for my life. But I've never been that kind of person. I've never romanticized that institution, so that's not an issue for me. But I think if you are going to get married, it's an absolute non-negotiable to get a prenup signed. Even if you got $2 to your name. You know what I mean? Like, I just think is some sort of understanding about how that relationship is going to look in the future, if it ever does dissolve, is necessary. Because every other institution we go into, there's an expectation set out in the contract, correct? When we go start a job, they tell you what your role is, what you're going to be signing on for. When you go to school, you get, your little manual about like how to conduct yourself. shoot, even when I go to shoot my films, I give people a little contract saying, this is what we're going to be doing. This is how we're going to be doing it. You know what I mean? Like most everything we do, we set out beforehand, but in marriage, it's like, oh, we want to get married. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I wonder why. I wonder if it's purposely like they don't put anything in those clauses in the marriage contract because they don't want people to like not do it.
Yeah, maybe. I think that's a part of it. And I think also too, when you're dealing with humans, emotions, trauma, it's hard to quantify.
Absolutely.
Because everybody's experience is their own, and what everybody's marriage is going to look like is going to be their own, right? But I do think what they should provide information on is the proper, not proper, because you go to a divorce attorney, but at least the protocol for getting the divorce and choosing to separate. Because I think people would think twice. You would have to, both of you guys would be signing on a line with knowing that in mind. And so more people would be more educated about the, about if the relationship is to dissolve, what that entails and what that looks like. Just like any other thing, if you get a bag of food and it has some chemical in it, or you have, let's use cleaning spray, it has a warning sign on it to warn you of the possible risk of using it. It has also who to contact if something were to happen. It has a list of all these risks and all of these the protocol to go to if you were to encounter any of these risks. So why isn't that put on something like a marriage license or certificate?
Exactly.
Or I will never understand. But at the same time, I can see,
because people wouldn't get married. That's why.
Yeah, people wouldn't get
be
married.
like, what?
And to be fair, marriage is a huge moneymaker. This guy in this, he is a divorce attorney, right? And this is how he's talking about it. You guys really should go watch it, because how he says things in this it makes a lot of sense. It is a little difficult to hear, I think, because your idea of marriage is probably going to be debunked and questioned. But the way he is talking about marriage as a divorce attorney says a lot. And what I mean by that is, this is how he makes money.
Yeah.
He's basically telling you, don't get married unless you absolutely have a prenup and you're able to have that conversation with your significant other, and just couple if you cannot agree on those two things.
Yeah.
Right? He will always be in business. Always.
Yeah.
Never not have a job. I'm pretty sure he looks like he's very big time. He's probably doing very well for himself. So, and he has no question that he is a recession-proof business. And I don't doubt it, to be fair.
Yeah,
I do
he
not
said
doubt
there
it.
were more people coming out of COVID coming to his office.
Yeah. So
he gave some free game too. He was like, honestly, if people did more pair bonding and really sat down and thought about marriage, I wouldn't have a job or a career.
Exactly. He
and he was
wouldn't
like,
have a job.
People are still going to do it. And I'm still going to have a job.
And he's so candid about like his lack of support in the institution of marriage and what marriage means. And it's still probably filthy rich because of it.
Yeah.
Because of people just don't want to educate themselves. They don't educate. They're just so caught up in their own dream and what the idea of love should look like. And half the time, most people are not getting that in marriage. He also talked about in the thing of how people go into a marriage, not only expecting a marriage, but they expect, it to be the person that they're best friends with, to do all these activities with, to travel with, and to be the best at all of those things. And it's like, nobody can give you that. No one can give you that, on top of you have to be in a happy marriage. Like, you can't just be in a marriage. You have to be happy. You have to be healthy. You have to be all of these best. And it's like, that's not even realistic. Nothing about that is realistic. Hell, even the little Princess Disney people that you see, they're not even perfect. They have flaws, and those are made up characters.
And I think too, also, like what Catelyn was saying, in our world, though, our idea of what a romantic partner should be is the soulmate model, which is that this person is not only my best friend, they're my best lover, they're the best cook, they're the best, activities partner, they're the best this, that, and the third. And it's like, honestly, I think we need to go to a more community-based model for where like, and people,
Yeah.
that's gonna real shake the table because people gonna be like, not you get with my man, you can't talk to my man, all that, you know what I mean? And but I think the idea that like, actually maybe this person I am really good friends with and is a good support system, but my best activities partner might be my best friend Cheryl.
Yeah, exactly. And that's
Cheryl might be who I
okay.
go to hang out with and do XYZ with, or Cheryl might be a better cook. You know what I mean? Like, we don't look to friendships to sustain the other, to fulfill part of our lives. We think this one person has to do that.
Yeah.
And since I've changed that mindset, I've realized I'm able to have so many more. I've opened myself up to productive friendships. You know what I mean? Like, I look to different people for different things. Like, okay, Catelyn can't exactly provide this level of support, but my other friend might be able to. You know what I mean? Sometimes I just need somebody to be like, you could do it, or whatever. Like, it's just, it's very, and and then you got to also be that for other people. So I think if we look at romantic partnerships as like, this person is somebody I've selected as I don't even want to say a core, but kind of my main, I guess, go-to, and somebody I live with and work with, I guess, in that respect, or build maybe a family with. But I look to other people, and I ask other people to be a part of my village to help create, a full life experience for me. And I think
Yeah. Yeah, he talked about that.
we assume that if my girlfriend is talking to another man, then they're trying to screw each other. And like, we have this hypersexualized view of everything that prevents people from really creating the community that they need.
Yeah. And I think it's very selfish. And watching this has helped me come to this conclusion. I think monogamy is very rooted in selfishness.
I agree.
And
And
because
control and ownership.
it's control and ownership, and you expect this one person to be everything to you. But when you are genuinely interested in this person, trying to be their best self, and them advocating for what is best for them, monogamy doesn't make sense.
I agree.
That's like,
It
you
doesn't.
can't say that, maybe, if they have a really good relationship with their parent, then their parent is obviously going to provide them something. I can't say cut off your mom and dad so that you can be everything to me, so you can act as my mom and dad.
Yeah.
That's not how that works. So I think it's very like the idea of, I'm not saying that you have to go out here and be, polyamorous or anything like that, but you should question yourself. Why do I have an issue with that? And a lot of that comes back to control and optics of what someone is telling you should have, and this idea that I should own this person, and this person has to be all of these things to me.
Yeah.
And to be fair, a marriage has oftentimes is not just about you. When you're going in with that attitude of, it's all about me and my needs and what I want, and this person has to be this, and this to me, and the other person's coming in with that energy too, it's bound to not work.
Yeah.
It's obvious why it's not working.
I think the reason why because of the idea of sexual infidelity and sexual, I think that's why people have historically been like, you can't have friends, you can't have this, you can't do this sort of like extra stuff, and I think again, if we move away from hypersexualizing everything, or if we move into, like Catelyn's saying, more of a community-based, looking to other people platonically to fulfill certain, I guess, I don't say roles, but yeah, maybe like certain roles in our lives, and we outsource to multiple different people, I think we would have a better experience of our romantic relationships. You know what I mean? Like,
I think it would take the taboo off of it too.
It would take the taboo off of it.
It was like, oh, I can't, like, part of the taboo, I think, for men is also the chase and the mystery and the thrill of it, right? When I already have you, it's no longer those things. It's not.
Yeah. I think
it's not
the
as
issue
fun.
is
Like,
a lot
at this
of
point,
men,
it's just work.
I just feel like a lot of people, I'm not going to say just men, but I feel like a lot of people don't know how to be in platonic relationships, just platonic relationships. They think anything that's a positive platonic relationship also is a sexual relationship. And I think that is also what keeps a lot of people from being like, we can form a wide community of people to fulfill certain different needs. They're like, you need to be exclusive to me because you're my only sexual partner.
Oh, yeah, no.
You know what I mean? And I think and you might, and I'm not even against having just one sexual partner or having, whatever. I'm not opposed to that. But I think if you do assume somebody's going to be your sexual partner, your best friend, and, the best cook, the best, car mechanic,
it's
the
unrealistic.
best everything, I think is unrealistic. And like, if we look beyond the potential of somebody cheating, which I guess is people's biggest fears in marriage or whatever, then, I think we can begin to start looking at community to help,
Yeah, and
but
to be
that's
fair,
real
I don't even
radical
think
for people. I think
no,
that's
it is.
real
It
radical.
definitely is. And the thing is, I think cheating is never really the issue. Like the cheating is, like the guy said, that's a symptom of the marriage failing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's why people are very like cut and dry, because at that point that's like the finalization. When I feel like most people probably know by that time, like, hey, this something in this is not working. There is some level of a disconnect, and usually you can see in actions and things like that before it ever gets to finding out cheating, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, I don't even think cheating is a deal breaker, right? It's a lack of communication. It's a lack of trust. Because to be fair, if a partner of mine came to me and was like, hey, I'm interested in so and so and so, I'm like, go ahead, do your thing, babes. You know what I mean? Like, who am I to stop you? Because what I do know is I'm not gonna be that girl every day. I'm just not gonna be that girl. You know what I'm saying? You have to know what you can offer and what you cannot offer. And if whatever you need to figure out, you need to figure out. And I'm talking in any capacity. That could be in a sexual relation, that could be in a friendship, that could be in activities, that could be in like, you need to go get fulfilled wherever you go get fulfilled. Because guess what? I'm gonna be doing the same thing. That's what I'm actively trying to do. I would hope that you're doing the same thing.
I would draw the only thing I would draw the line is that sexual going with other people only because of like diseases and stuff.
I mean, I think that is.
That's me though.
I understand the precaution in that, but I also think too that if that is a dynamic that you are interested in doing, bring that to the table, bring that person to the table, and we can all discuss that together. You know what I mean? I'm
People
not
are
above
so
that.
dishonest about it because they're trying to maintain the status quo.
Oh no, I think
That's really the issue. Is like people are trying to maintain the status quo of what a monogamous marriage should look like, and so they just lie, and they really want to do polyamory, or they really want to be able to have other families and do all this other shit, but then they come and they go and like get in a marriage and try to like secure that, and then go do whatever else they're going to do on the side. And it's like, if you just came with polyamory to begin with, you can discuss that. But
exactly.
they know most people ain't gonna go for polyamory, so they just lie.
And to be fair, before all of these conversations start, it starts with communication, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times that's also what's lacking in a lot of marriages is basic communications, or in any relationship, to be fair, it's basic communication. If you know what I mean, like I think it's important to have those conversations, and like, you know what, if I'm interested in somebody, what is your stance going to be on that? And maybe that'll tell you if that person is or is not for you. And then you don't even have to waste your time. Like, you don't even got to go down the marriage train thought, any of it.
Yeah.
But I think it is, and that's why I think I'm a fan of coupling, is because I think that people are in your life for a reason and a season. I don't believe in the one, like that concept is absurd to me.
Yeah.
You have phases in life where this person may suit you at this time and this person may not. Just because you as a human you are very dynamic. Like, you're going to have highs and lows and in betweens and all of those things like that. You are not going to be the same person, or I hope you're not going to be the same person in 20 years. So who's to say that person still wants to deal with you or not deal with you? Or maybe they like who you have become, or they don't. Like, they have the right to advocate for themselves in a relationship too. So team coupling all the way. And I suggest you as a person in that relationship to do the same, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm almost on the spectrum of like, just don't be in relationships at all. I'm like relationship anarchy. All right.
I disagree with
Cut
that.
the shit totally. And I'm only saying that because I don't know, maybe I'm just aromantic and I don't give a damn. But personally, I don't see why everything I can do in a platonic relationship, I guess besides the sexual element to it, I could like do in a romantic relationship. So why be in a romantic relationship? Like, why not just stay in platonic relationships?
I think there are some benefits to being in a romantic relationship. There's, like he said in the interview, he was saying that it's very hard to see yourself if you're in the lens, right? But it's easier for someone else to do that for you. And I think that is one way.
The truth is, like, I can do that if I have really good platonic friends, they're doing that anyway.
Oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. He says that in there, that you have soulmates or people that you have those ties to, and that does not have to be romantic in any capacity.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I hear that. I do think that if that's how you're thinking about it, then
That's why I'm saying I
think it's
don't see
perfectly fine.
I don't see romantic relationships as necessary, and I
Mhm.
don't even always see them as I see them as more risk adverse than not.
Yeah, that's true.
That's
You know what?
that's how I think about them. Because even in a partner pair bonding, you still have the risk of somebody hurting you at least emotionally deeply. Maybe they can't take all your money like a marriage,
Mhm.
but you have the risk of somebody emotionally and even maybe sometimes physically damaging you,
Mhm. Mhm.
mentally damaging you, versus if we're not in that kind of arrangement, you know, it, even as friends, we'll just cut it off. Like we were in a platonic relationship anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I think the safest thing you can do is to be like, here's a spectrum for me. There's single, non-romantic relationship, not looking for a romantic relationship. Fuck romantic relationships. Pair bonding, marriage. Marriage is like iron lock, contract, put on the shackles. You know what I'm saying? I think, and pair bonding is sort of like in between to
Hmm.
me.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like a neutral.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. You know what I thought was really interesting though that he did not talk about? He didn't talk about anything related to having children and the effects of that on a marriage.
Yeah,
I
but
was
I,
like,
I
that's
I could see
surprising.
him not really having that perspective since he is a divorce attorney. He's really breaking up couples,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
so
yeah.
much
True,
with
true. The
children.
kids.
But that's something to think about too. Is what does
Mhm.
this effect have on the children that you bring into the world? Because
Mhm.
we know what our situation was like, and our parents were not married, and that's
Mhm.
in we 25,
Exactly.
26 years old, really trying to even unpack that.
Mhm.
Imagine people who do have parents who got divorced or married multiple times, or like all of these things, and like bringing new people into their lives and having to switch homes and like all of these things. Like it's just that is their scope. Imagine being a child and the only thing is divorce and disconnection.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's how a lot of us were
Yeah.
raised, was on
And I
divorce and
think too, like
disconnection.
it's not necessarily the actual divorce and the disconnection, because I think that is comprehensible to kids of like, okay, you can sit down a kid and be like, mommy and daddy were here and now we're gonna go our separate ways and you have to travel back and forth. I think it's how the divorce usually happens, and that it gets
Yeah,
really, 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 really nasty quickly. Because now people don't know what they're signing up for from in the beginning. So it's like a shock when you are finding this out, but you now have to kind of like, almost, it's this idea that you have to fight, right, in a divorce. And so then people are really bringing out freaking battle gear, and
agreed.
the kid sees that. Like some people, at one point, I guess the kids hopefully saw that their parents loved each other and were able to at least coexist at bare minimum.
Hmm.
um to now it's the complete arms up, like I'm sure they've never seen their parents in that capacity, because divorce really brings out the ugly in people.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think the people that divorce turns or what divorce turns people into is usually what has a longer impact
Hmm.
on the child mentally, emotionally. That's what they're usually unpacking. Is like kids can understand the mechanics of like, well, mommy and daddy aren't going to be in the same house anymore. Like
Hmm.
generally that's not so much the issue. It's like why mom or like why mom is drinking alcohol because of like said divorce, or why dad is like incapable of like loving me now because of the divorce. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's the
Yeah.
kind of stuff that ends up really affecting children for a very long time into adulthood.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
You know? Yeah. And something else he said, which kind of goes back to what we were saying about the stats he was giving everybody. He really broke this down, which really helped, was an eye opener for me. He said that marriage is a negligent, by a legal
Oh yeah, that was
definition,
interesting.
marriage is a negligent activity. And what he means
Hmm.
by that, not negligence in the sense that like I forgot to turn off the stove before I left and now the house is
Hmm.
burned,
Hmm.
not like that. But he's saying like in law school, what is considered negligent is like if the burden of not doing something is lower than the risk you take doing it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the risk you take for getting married is higher than the burden of not doing it.
Hmm.
So it is a negligent activity to do. So what we were talking about percentages, like there's a higher chance of you getting divorced than not getting divorced. So when you step into that institution, you've already lost statistically.
Yeah.
So that really helped break it down for me. It was very much like, it's like opportunity cost, that is an econ. Like, what do I lose by doing this or not doing it? And it's like, actually not doing it, you have more to potentially gain, or you run the risk of losing less by not doing it, which is true when we think about life. If you're a single person, not married, or if you're pair bonded, not married, then there's absolutely no chance that I'm going to lose half my house. There's no chance I'm going to lose, half my car or or the ownership of, this asset or whatever. I have no chance of that because I never signed the thing in the first place.
Yeah. And I think too that like even emotionally speaking, right? Which, a lot of times in divorce, it really comes down to the financial means, right? But even when you're just coupling, you have the option to, I think, walk away more freely without going through all of these other things, like this character shift and this like mentality you have to fight and win and you become something that you are not. Like it's like a trickle down effect, right? On top of, I think when you just couple, you are actively choosing to stay every day. You know what I mean? Versus a marriage, you get to in a level of almost like complacency that you don't necessarily always have when you're just coupling. But no, that right there was, it don't make it's if you put it in context of like a child, it don't make sense. Why do it?
It just does not make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Basically, he was saying on paper, the institution of marriage does not make sense. And like the way we do it now does not make sense. I think he was even saying back in the day it didn't make sense, but again, it was more about direct property ownership and getting access to, investments and all these things, and then getting access to women. So like when women and relationships were much more controlled at that time, then of course marriages broke up less because there was no ability to divorce. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I think he was even saying then, he was like, even then it really didn't make sense. You know what I mean?
Thank you for listening to part 1 of our discussion on love and marriage. We hope you found this conversation insightful and interesting. Maybe we even change your ideas on matrimony. Don't forget to join us next week for part 2 of our discussion. Bye, everybody.